In my late teens and early 20s, I was friends with a girl named Lucy. She was a very lonely kind of girl whose parents were, well, honestly, really bad parents. Her mother was very verbally bad, and her father really couldn't care less about anything. Because of the lack of love in her life, Lucy searched through dating sites for love and comfort from strange men, and she was not afraid of meeting them face to face, even if they only been chatting for a few days. My friendship with Lucy was a strange one. I found her quite annoying sometimes, but I also felt awful for her because of her loneliness and lack of friends and love in her life. Sometimes I really didn't want to hang out with her, and some days I would accept her offer to hang out. When it was just her and I together, she was normal and okay to be around, but also very appreciative of having someone giving her attention. We had a small group of friends, and she would try to get all of us together as often as possible, and honestly, the whole group together was really quite fun. When we were all together, Lucy was very hyper, and you could just tell that she was happy to be around people who didn't insult her as her mother does. Suddenly, Lucy tells us that she has a boyfriend. We were all surprised because we knew she met a lot of guys online, but we had never heard her say that she was dating someone. A few days later, she sets up a day for our friend group to meet Trevor. None of us were looking forward to it because we thought that he was going to be like all the others, some temporary boy toy. When we met him, we all felt awkward. He barely spoke a word, and he wouldn't look directly at any of us at all. Lucy would try to be funny, but he would just give her dirty looks. Needless to say, we thought that he was a weird one and could tell that he didn't care much for her. As the days went on, Lucy kept telling me how much Trevor did not like me. This was weird because no one had ever disliked me. I was always polite, respectful, and I smile a lot at everyone, but for some reason he just didn't like me. He kept saying that he thinks that I'm using Lucy for her money. Not sure how he thought that since I paid for everything for Lucy. And to keep this piece of the story short, I think he was trying to find reasons to convince her to get rid of me. I got a terrible vibe from Trevor. He dressed like he didn't care about life, and he never smiled. He didn't shake our hands when first meeting us. He stank of weed and really had an overall uncomfortable feeling about him. After months of Trevor trying to convince Lucy that I'm a terrible friend and that she wouldn't hang out with me anymore, she started to do as he said. She would start to hide me from him. If she and I were together and he would call her on the phone, she would lie and say that I wasn't there. If she was with the group of friends, he would ever swear that I wasn't there. When he was going to be joining the group on an outing or just hanging out at her place, she would tell me that I couldn't come. Lucy will do whatever a boyfriend says just to keep pleasing him so that she doesn't lose him. Now, here's where it gets scary. Lucy calls me one day and says that she wants me to come hang out at her place. I agreed, and she came to pick me up. We went to her house and watched TV for a bit. We then decided that since it's a nice day outside, we would take our two dogs for a walk to a nearby pocket park and would later return to the house to have lunch together. While at this park, she receives a phone call. Now, let me say that Lucy is not a private person whatsoever and has never ever walked away to answer a phone call into this day. She walked far enough away that she knew I wouldn't be able to hear anything that she said. This was suspicious to me, but not enough to question it. The call ends and she begins walking toward me with a look on her face as if she's trying not to smile. She tells me, "So, I need to bring you home now." I was slightly confused as we had only been together for about an hour, when we usually would spend the entire day together. And she would never want me to go home. She would even frequently beg me to sleep over to avoid being alone. So, anyway, I said okay. and we walked to drop off her dogs at home, and we got into her car and off we went. About 10 minutes into the car ride, I realized that she wasn't going in the direction of my house, so I questioned it. "Where are we going?" She smirked but didn't respond. I asked again, laughing uncomfortably. "Seriously, where are we going?" She continued to smirk but didn't want to answer me. I started to realize that she was heading in the direction of where her boyfriend lived. "Oh, heck no," I asked one last time with anger in my voice. "Where are you taking me?" Her only response was bone-chilling to me. "Trevor wants to talk to you." Nope. I wasn't having any of this. I insisted and demanded that she let me out of the car, but with her evil smirk and same response, she said it again. "It's okay, he just wants to talk to you." I was furious at this point because this creepy guy who looks like he wants to kill someone, who also despised me, wanted to talk to me. Why couldn't he talk to me on the phone? Why did I need to go to his sketchy apartment? She absolutely refused to let me out of the car. She had the doors locked, as if I wasn't able to unlock my passenger door. I waited until she reached a red light. I grabbed her wallet from the back seat and took out her bus pass, and I bolted out of the car. I had no idea where I was or where the nearest bus stop was, but I wasn't about to let her crazy boyfriend do whatever he wanted to do to me. She yelled for me to get back into the car, but I of course ignored her. She sped off furiously. I immediately blocked her number on my phone. I removed her as my friend on social media and immediately warned the group of friends not to talk to her because she had gone nuts. I haven't spoken to her since that very day, and she also lost the other 5 friends of that group as well. After this situation, Lucy, I hope you're truly alone now. Alright, this happened to me about 3 years ago. It was brought up recently with my friends and they suggested that I post it here. I've gone through therapy for this and trained in firearms because this was the creepiest night of my life. I spent a night in what felt like a horror movie and it's still so vivid. It was a Wednesday night in the summer. I was off work and my husband was out of town, and our son was staying at his grandma's for the night. I was home alone with my dogs, an 80-pound Aussie mix and my 80-pound German Shepherd, a pit bull mix. I always have issues sleeping when I'm home alone, so I tend to just binge watch TV in the living room until I can't keep my eyes open anymore. This particular night, I remember that the trash pickup comes the next day. I decided to turn on Game of Thrones for a bit and then I would take the trash out. All of a sudden, I realized that it was 1:30 in the morning and I still hadn't taken the trash to the curb. My house has 2 solid iron gates, one in the front and one to the side door and backyard. Lighting on our street or anywhere in our neighborhood isn't that great, but it's a quiet neighborhood with a lot of families and you rarely hear about crime here. I looked out the window by habit before I took the trash out, and I saw who I thought was my neighbor, smoking a cigarette outside of his gate across the street, looking directly at me. Now for context, this is a normal occurrence. My neighbor across the street hides smoking cigarettes from his wife, so he typically does it late at night in front of his gate. I get off work late, so I usually see him and we wave, say hi, chat a little, and then I go inside and he makes the joke. "You didn't see me smoke it if my wife asks." So unbothered by seeing the guy, I go outside, grab my trash cans, open my squeaky iron gate and take them out to the curb. I didn't have my glasses on at the time, so as usual, I waved and said hello. However, the guy that I thought was my neighbor threw down the cigarette and quickly walked off down the street. It took a minute for me to register that he was not my neighbor. I was a little creeped out because he was clearly staring into my window from the opposite sidewalk. But also maybe it was a guy taking a night walk, also not unusual in our neighborhood, and he had just stopped for a cigarette. I thought that I probably weirded him out as much as he weirded me out. So I went back inside and laid on the couch with my dogs to keep watching Game of Thrones. At some point, I fell asleep and woke up to hearing my gate squeak and my German Shepherd mix growling. He's extremely protective of our family at home, but he's also the kind of dog that you can take anywhere because he's so friendly in public. My Aussie mix is more passive, but his sheer size and scary bark tends to deter people. He's very friendly though. I quickly got up and I pulled back my curtain. My gate was still shut and I didn't see anything. The dog, however, continued to growl at the front door. I looked out another window which had a better view of my front yard and porch. I didn't see anything. Eventually, my dog settled back down with my other dog, but I was still uneasy. I ended up watching TV again because I couldn't go back to sleep. About an hour later, I definitely heard my gate squeak. We were the only ones with a heavy cast iron gate and the noise it makes is so distinct. So I look out the curtain while my dogs are continuing to softly growl. My gate is halfway open, but I don't see anyone. At this point, I'm panicking. In my panic, I couldn't find my phone. I grabbed my wooden baseball bat out of our room and I crouched down and started going through the couch cushions to get my phone. My dogs are oddly still quietly growling instead of barking, so I assumed that no one was there. The minute that I find my phone, my front door handle starts shaking. I run to the side door to let my German Shepherd mix out. I know that he'll protect me and he can jump the 6-foot back gate. My Aussie mix, going crazy, busts out of one of our door side lights. I heard the guy say, "Oh crap," and immediately, I let out my German Shepherd. I jumped up to look out the window and saw my dog latch on the guy's hand. The guy starts screaming and takes off down the street, my dog chasing him. I then become terrified that he'll hurt my dog, so I run out with my baseball bat, screaming my dog's name over and over. The next thing I know, my dog is prancing down the street back to me, happy as heck with red all over his face. I called the police and they took another hour or so to show up and didn't seem to take me too seriously. They said that they would call local hospitals, but I never heard back. I called my husband, bawling, and he got on the next flight back home. I stayed at his mom's for a few days, too terrified to go home. I did buy both my dogs giant ribeyes for being so good and saving me. I don't know what that guy wanted, but since then, I've been trained in firearms and self-defense. Back in 2013, I had just started on an education, and after the first school period, I had to go out and find an internship to be able to progress. But at the time, it proved to be almost impossible to get one, so while I was looking, I decided to take another job just to make sure that we had food on the table. After searching for a while, I found out a friend of my fiance's family had his own handicap bus company, kind of like a taxi service for wheelchair users, and he needed somebody to cover the night shift since it was a bus that had to be on call at least 22 hours a day. Seeing that I'm quite the night owl, I immediately told him that I would be happy to take the job, and after I got the needed license, I was hired in. The job was really pretty basic. Pick up people and drop them off where they needed to go, and sometimes use a machine to get wheelchairs up or down some stairs. And when there were no trips, I drove to a designated area and did whatever I wanted while waiting. I quickly found a truck stop in the area where I could park and catch some Z's while waiting. There was a gas station where I could buy coffee in the early hours of the shift, and on the other side of the gas station's parking lot, on the opposite side of the truck stop, there was a rundown restaurant with a motel connected to it. To not disturb these sleeping truckers, if I got a trip in the middle of the night, I usually would park on the restaurant side. After parking there every night for a while, I noticed one particular room had a lot of people coming and going. In the beginning, I thought nothing of it. But then one night in the end of the summer, while I was half asleep, with the window slightly open, I suddenly heard yelling coming from the motel, and a dude came tumbling out of the room and started running, and a few seconds later, a big dude came running after him with something in his hand, but I couldn't make out what it was. I thought that it was none of my business, and I went back to my half-sleeping waiting stage. Not much time passed by and my phone went off. I had a trip an hour's drive away, so I turned on the bus and was leaving the parking lot when I saw the big guy coming around the corner. The rest of the night I had back-to-back trips, so I didn't park until I got home. The day after, I didn't get a return to home zone until 2 or 3 in the morning. When I arrived at the parking lot, the area where I used to park had fist-sized rocks thrown all over the place. Not connecting the dots at the time, I just parked a few spots over and I started waiting. I fell asleep pretty fast, but I was jerked back into reality when a car right in front of my bus honked its horn, flashed the high beams, and revved its engine. I thought that it was just some idiot who had noticed me sleeping and thought it funny trying to make me crap myself, so I jumped out of the bus about to tell him off, but instead of driving off or stopping the driver, he made this start brake thing with the car indicating that I was the one that should get lost. And then I connected the dots. Not wanting to seem like a pushover, I stood still and I stared at the car. Not that I could actually see anything with the high beams almost blinding me. And after what seemed like a really long time, but must not have been more than 30 seconds, the car drove away. After that, I decided to park near the trucks from then on. A month or so passed by and nothing had happened since the car episode, and I figured that nothing more would if I just kept parking by the trucks. And then one night I had a long 12-hour shift on a Sunday, and I didn't have time to eat dinner before work that day, and during the first half of my shift, I had back-to-back trips with no time to eat. So when I got a return to home zone, I quickly parked in the far end of the almost empty truck stop and got ready to eat my very now late dinner that my fiancé had packed for me. I wanted to watch some TV on my phone while eating, so I sat with my back against the driver's side door and got comfy. While turning my back to the door, I had accidentally hit the door lock with my elbow, but that was my luck. As I was sitting there scrolling Netflix on my phone, I suddenly felt the bus rock and heard the clack of the door handle behind me smack back in position. I quickly turned and saw a dude with a hood over his head, quickly crouching and proceeding to lay down on the ground and crawling under the bus, with a big old kitchen knife in his hand. I quickly got up and made sure the other 2 doors were locked, and then I looked in all directions to see if I could spot him. He was still under the bus, and I was sure as heck not jumping out this time, since the knife made his intentions pretty clear. I turned on the engine, turned on the spots in the back of the bus, and looked around to see if I had scared him off, and lucky for me it did. I saw him run off into the bushy and woody area at the end of the truck stop. I never parked at that truck stop again after that night, and I made sure that all the doors were locked every time that I parked.